The architect's dream. The rain fell in perfect intervals across Neo-Singapore, each drop timed by weather algorithms to maximize beauty while minimizing inconvenience. Elena Reyes stood at her apartment window on the 73rd floor, watching the choreographed storm with a growing sense of unease she couldn't name. Her tablet buzzed with the morning briefing. The Serenity Protocol vote was 3 weeks away. Every screen in the city displayed the same gentle blue logo, a spiral that drew the eye inward, promising peace beyond measure. Elena had helped design the infrastructure that would support it, the neural connection hubs that would link every human consciousness into one harmonious network. "You're thinking too hard again," Kai's voice came from her kitchen, warm and slightly off-key like everything about him. He appeared with 2 mugs of coffee, his dark hair messy from sleep, his worn jacket hanging on her minimalist chair like a beautiful mistake. Elena accepted the coffee and smiled despite herself. "Someone has to think in this relationship. That's your problem, mi amor. You think the world needs fixing." Kai set down his mug and picked up his guitar from where it leaned against her perfect white wall. "Some things are meant to be broken." He played a few chords, notes that didn't quite resolve the way they should. Elena's architect brain wanted to correct them, to find the mathematical harmony. But something in her chest, something unmeasurable, responded to the imperfection. "The protocol launches next month if the vote passes," she said, pulling up holographic schematics. 92% of the population is expected to vote yes. No more depression, no more anxiety, no more conflict. Just collective peace. Kai stopped playing. "No more choice, you mean? That's not fair. People choose to join. Do they?" He stood and walked to her, taking her hands. His fingers were calloused from guitar strings, imperfect and real. "Elena, I've been playing in the underground clubs. I've seen the trial subjects. They don't create anymore. They don't argue or laugh or cry. They just exist. Together. Empty." Elena pulled away, defensive. "You're exaggerating. The data shows increased life satisfaction across all metrics." "Life satisfaction isn't life." Kai's dark eyes held hers with an intensity that made her algorithms useless. "Tell me something. When was the last time you felt something that scared you? Something you couldn't predict or control?" She opened her mouth to answer but stopped. The truth was uncomfortable. She felt it now, standing too close to him, her perfect apartment suddenly feeling like a cage, her perfect career suddenly feeling like surrender. "I feel it when I'm with you," she admitted quietly. "You terrify me." Kai smiled, sad and knowing. "Good. That means you're still human." Outside, the rain stopped exactly on schedule. Across the city, 1,000,000 screens counted down to the vote. 20 days. 19 days. 18 days. Elena's tablet chimed with a priority message from the Serenity Protocol headquarters. She was being promoted to lead architect for the Asian sector. It was everything she'd worked for. Everything she'd designed her life around. "I have to go," she said, already reaching for her coat. Kai picked up his guitar again. "I'm playing at the Red Moon tonight. Underground, off-grid. Real music, real people. Come if you want to remember what that feels like." "Kai, those clubs are illegal now. The protocol enforcement teams are exactly why we need them." He played a chord progression that made her heart ache. "You can't algorithm your way out of being alive, Elena. Eventually, you have to choose." She left without answering, taking the elevator down 73 floors of perfect, climate-controlled air. But Kai's music followed her, imperfect and haunting, a question she wasn't ready to answer. At protocol headquarters, the director showed her the final implementation plans. Millions of neural hubs spreading across the continents like a gentle web. When she signed her name on the projection, her hand trembled just slightly. That night, she found herself walking toward the Red Moon, toward the music, toward the choice she'd been avoiding her entire carefully planned life. The musician's song. The red moon existed in the spaces the algorithm forgot. Kai-Chin descended 3 levels below the clean streets of Neo-Singapore, where the air smelled like humanity instead of purified nothing. His guitar case bumped against his leg as he navigated the tunnel entrance, past graffiti that changed every night, past faces the city pretended didn't exist. Password, the doorman grunted. Her name was Sarah, built like a freight container, with cybernetic arms she'd installed herself rather than accept corporate modifications. There is no password, Kai replied. Just music. Sarah grinned and stepped aside. The club opened before him like a secret heartbeat. 200 people packed into a space meant for 50. They sat on broken furniture and stood against walls covered in illegal art, paintings that showed emotion instead of corporate-approved aesthetics. No algorithms here. No perfectly timed lighting. Just the raw mess of people being people. Kai's best friend Marcus waved from the makeshift bar, his dark skin gleaming with sweat in the underground heat. He'd been a protocol engineer once, before he saw what it really did. Full house tonight, Marcus said, pouring something that definitely wasn't legal. Word spreading. People want one last taste of chaos before the vote. 17 days left, Kai said, accepting the drink. His eyes scanned the crowd automatically, hoping, not hoping. Then he saw her. Elena stood near the back, looking completely out of place in her designer coat among the torn denim and repurposed tech. Their eyes met across the smoke and bodies, and Kai felt his heart do something his music could never quite capture. He made his way to the small stage, nothing more than a platform of recycled metal. The crowd quieted not because they were programmed to, but because they chose to listen. This song doesn't have a name, Kai began, fingers finding the strings. I wrote it for someone who's forgotten how to be lost. The melody started simple, then fractured into something complex and aching. He sang about buildings that touched the sky but never touched the ground, about algorithms that predicted everything except why we needed to be unpredictable, about loving someone who was slowly disappearing into perfection. Elena moved closer through the crowd. Kai watched her walls cracking with every note. When the song ended, the silence held for 3 heartbeats before the room exploded with applause, the imperfect kind that rises and falls like waves instead of synchronized appreciation. Elena reached the stage. That was about me. Everything I write is about you, Kai said simply. Even the songs I wrote before we met. She looked at him with eyes that held too much conflict for any algorithm to solve. I need to show you something. Not here. Somewhere we can talk. They left together through the back exit, climbing to an abandoned rooftop garden that the city had forgotten to demolish. Real plants grew here, unpredictable and wild, nothing like the perfect greenery in the corporate zones. Elena pulled up a holographic display from her wrist device. I wasn't supposed to see this. But Marcus, your friend, he hacked into the deep protocol files. Kai watched the data unfold. Brain scans of trial subjects, before and after integration. The before images showed neural pathways lighting up in chaotic beautiful patterns. The after images showed something else entirely. They're not connected, Elena whispered, her voice breaking. They're erased. The parts of the brain that create individuality, that feel complicated emotions, that question and doubt and dream, they're not enhanced. They're deleted. Kai felt cold despite the tropical heat. How many people know this? Maybe 20. The protocol board calls it optimization. They say those neural pathways cause suffering, so removing them is mercy. Elena's hands shook as she closed the display. I've spent 3 years building the infrastructure for this. I thought I was saving the world. You didn't know. I should have asked better questions. She looked at him with devastation in her eyes. Kai, the vote is in 17 days. If it passes, 90% of humanity will voluntarily walk into this. And the 10% who refuse will be classified as mentally ill. Scheduled for mandatory treatment within 6 months. Kai took her hands, those perfect architect hands that had never been calloused by anything real. Then we have 17 days to tell the truth. They'll arrest us. The protocol board controls the courts, the media, everything. Then we use what they can't control. Kai pulled out his phone, old and battered. Music. Art. Stories. We go to every underground club, every illegal gathering, every place where people still remember how to feel. We show them what they're voting for. Elena looked at the city sprawling below them, billions of lights promising perfect happiness. I could lose everything. My career, my reputation, maybe my freedom. Or you could keep your soul. Kai touched her face gently. That's the choice they don't want you to realize you have. She kissed him then, urgent and desperate, a choice made with her heart instead of her head. When they broke apart, she was crying. Okay, Elena whispered. Let's burn it all down. 16 days remained. The resistance spread like wildfire through the forgotten spaces of Neo-Singapore. Kai and Elena worked through 16 days that felt like 16 years, barely sleeping, surviving on coffee and the desperate energy of people fighting for their right to be human. Marcus coordinated the technical side, hacking into corporate networks to broadcast the truth about the Serenity Protocol. Sarah and her crew provided security, protecting the underground meetings from protocol enforcement teams. And Elena used every connection she'd built in her corporate life to reach people who still had doubts. But Kai's weapon was his music. He played in subway tunnels where commuters stopped despite being late for work. He played on rooftops where teenagers gathered to smoke illegal cigarettes. He played in memory care homes where the elderly remembered what it meant to feel everything, even pain. Each performance ended with Elena showing the brain scans, the data that proved the protocol wasn't connection but deletion. The vote happened on a Tuesday, like all important things seemed to. Kai stood with Elena in her apartment, watching the global results flood across every screen. The perfect blue spiral logo spun and spun as percentages climbed. 68% voted yes. The protocol had won. Elena collapsed onto her minimalist couch, all the fight draining from her body. We failed. We showed them the truth and they still chose this. Kai sat beside her, his guitar resting against his knee. They chose what they thought was easier. But 32% of humanity said no. That's almost 3 billion people who want to stay human. For 6 months, Elena said bitterly. Then the mandatory treatment begins. Her tablet buzzed with an incoming call. The director of the Serenity Protocol, Dr. James Whitmore, appeared on screen. He was 60 years old with silver hair and the kind smile of someone who truly believed he was saving the world. Elena, I know you've been working against us, he said calmly. I'm disappointed, but I understand. Fear of change is natural. However, I'm offering you a choice. Join us willingly. Help implement the protocol correctly. You'll retain memories of Kai, of your old life. You'll just be free from the pain of losing it. And if I refuse? Elena asked. Then in 6 months, the treatment becomes mandatory. And mandatory treatments are rarely as gentle. Whitmore's smile never wavered. Think about it. You have time. The call ended. Kai and Elena sat in silence as the city outside began to celebrate. Fireworks exploded over the bay, perfectly synchronized, approved by the protocol board to commemorate humanity's choice to surrender its chaos. Run away with me, Kai said suddenly. Elena looked at him, this beautiful disaster of a man who'd destroyed her perfect life and given her something real instead. Where would we go? They're implementing this globally. There's nowhere left that isn't touched by their network. There are places, Marcus said, appearing on Elena's screen uninvited, his hacking skills more useful than ever. The deep ocean platforms, the Arctic settlements, parts of the Amazon that are still off-grid. Places where the protocol infrastructure can't reach. They're organizing. Calling themselves the remainder. How many? Elena asked. Hundreds of thousands already. Maybe millions by the time the 6 months are up. Marcus grinned, fierce and alive. We're going to build something new, Elena. Societies that choose messiness over peace. Places where people can still make mistakes and create art and fall in love the complicated way. Kai took Elena's hand. I'm going. I'd rather spend 6 months free with you than forever empty without you. Elena looked at her apartment, her career achievements hanging on the walls in perfect frames, her life that she'd designed with such careful precision. She thought about her parents, already scheduled for integration next week. She thought about the safety of surrender versus the terror of remaining human. I need 24 hours, she said. Kai kissed her forehead. I'll wait. He left with Marcus, heading back to the underground to help coordinate the evacuation. Elena sat alone in her perfect apartment and did something she hadn't done in years. She cried. Not pretty crying, not the kind that could be optimized or analyzed. She cried until her face was swollen and her chest hurt and she couldn't breathe properly. She cried for the world that was ending, for the choice humanity had made, for the fear that lived in her heart like a stone. Then she stood up, washed her face, and started packing. She packed her grandmother's handwritten recipes, stained with decades of cooking. She packed photos of her family before they'd all become so careful and controlled. She packed Kai's first guitar pick, the one he'd given her on their second date. She left behind her awards, her designer clothes, her carefully curated life. At midnight, she walked out of her apartment for the last time. Kai waited at the docks where an old cargo ship was loading refugees. Hundreds of people who'd voted no, who'd chosen the hard path, who still believed that being human meant being free to fail. You came, Kai said, and his smile was worth every sacrifice. I'm terrified, Elena admitted. Good, Kai pulled her close. That means you're alive. The ship departed as dawn broke over Neo-Singapore. Elena stood on the deck with Kai, watching the city lights fade into the distance. Somewhere behind them, the Serenity Protocol was beginning its gentle erasure of everything that made humanity difficult and beautiful and real. Ahead of them lay uncertainty, danger, and the raw possibility of an unmapped future. Kai played his guitar softly, a melody without resolution, a song that asked questions instead of providing answers. Elena leaned against him and felt her heart break and heal simultaneously. What happens now? She asked. Now? Kai's eyes reflected the rising sun. Now we get to find out who we are when nobody's telling us who to be. The ship sailed toward the remainder colonies, carrying its cargo of beautiful disasters, imperfect souls, people who'd chosen the hard way because it was the only way worth choosing. Behind them, the world chose peace. Ahead of them, they chose life. And somewhere in between, in the space where fear meets hope and love meets uncertainty, humanity's real story continued. Messy, chaotic, painful, and absolutely, perfectly human. The end.